There is too much evil, and the guy spreads too much hate. These were the chilling. There is too much evil, and the guy spreads too much hate. These were the chilling words 22-year-old Tyler Robinson spoke to his parents when he confessed to assassinating Charlie Kirk, one of America's most prominent conservative voices, in broad daylight on a university campus. On September 10, 2025, the nation watched in horror as graphic footage spread across social media showing the moment a single bullet ended Kirk's life during what should have been a routine speaking event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. If you're new to The Only Witness, welcome to the channel where we dive deep into the cases that shake America to its core. Before we get into Tyler Robinson's shocking confession and the political firestorm that followed, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Are you in Utah, California, New York, Texas? We want to hear from every corner of America on this one. This isn't just another true crime story. This is about the assassination of a major political figure, a nationwide manhunt, a father's impossible choice, and a confession that has divided the nation along the deepest political lines imaginable. This is about Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old who pulled the trigger, and the question everyone is asking: was this political assassination or something more personal? The American Comeback Tour was supposed to be Charlie Kirk's triumphant return to the speaking circuit. As founder of Turning Point USA, the conservative organization that had become a powerhouse in youth politics, Kirk was one of the most recognizable voices in the conservative movement. He was a close ally of President Donald Trump, a fierce advocate for conservative values, and a lightning rod for controversy with his outspoken views on everything from transgender rights to immigration. Utah Valley University in Orem was the first stop of the season. It was an outdoor event, with Kirk speaking to a crowd of supporters at approximately 12:10 p.m. Mountain Time. His wife and children were present, along with hundreds of attendees who had come to hear him speak about America's future. 20 minutes into his speech, at exactly 12:30 p.m., everything changed. A single shot rang out across the campus. In footage that would soon be viewed millions of times across social media platforms, Charlie Kirk can be seen reaching toward his neck as he falls from his chair. Blood immediately begins gushing from the wound. The crowd erupts into chaos, people running and screaming as security rushes to Kirk's aid. Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, was pronounced dead at the scene. The bullet had struck him in the neck, severing his carotid artery. He died in front of his wife, his children, and hundreds of supporters. The shooter had fired from a rooftop approximately 130 yards away from where Kirk was speaking. After taking the shot, he jumped down from the rooftop and disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a rifle and ammunition in a wooded area near the university. The entire campus was immediately locked down, classes were cancelled, and a massive manhunt began. President Trump addressed the nation that evening, calling Kirk's assassination an attack on free speech and conservative values in America. The political world erupted with accusations, conspiracy theories, and calls for justice. But the most important question remained: who did this and why? The FBI released security footage showing the shooter on the rooftop, but his face was obscured. They found shoe impressions and trace evidence at the scene. Most significantly, they found something that would become central to understanding the killer's motive: bullet casings with messages engraved on them. One casing was inscribed with "Hey Fascist." Another simply said, "Enough." The messages suggested a political motive, but investigators needed to find the shooter before they could understand what had driven him to commit this act of political violence. The break in the case came from an unexpected source: Tyler Robinson's own father. Before we continue with how Tyler Robinson was caught and what he told investigators, make sure you're subscribed to The Only Witness and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. This case has Americans from every state talking. Let us know your location and your thoughts. Tyler Robinson was a 22-year-old college student living in Utah with his roommate. He had no prior criminal record, no history of violence, and no obvious connection to extremist groups. By all accounts, he was an ordinary young man living an ordinary life. But Tyler Robinson harbored deep anger toward Charlie Kirk and what he represented. According to charging documents and text messages recovered by investigators, Robinson had been increasingly disturbed by Kirk's rhetoric, particularly his views on transgender rights. Robinson's roommate was a transgender individual, described in court documents as a biological male who was transitioning genders. The charging documents refer to this person as Robinson's lover roommate, suggesting a close, personal relationship. Text messages between Robinson and his roommate show Robinson expressing frustration and anger about Kirk's anti-trans statements and conservative activism. In one message, Robinson allegedly wrote that he had enough of his hatred. But the full picture of Robinson's motive wouldn't become clear until after his dramatic capture. On September 12, 2025, 2 days after the assassination, Tyler Robinson was still on the run. A massive FBI manhunt was underway, with agents combing through security footage, interviewing witnesses, and following leads across multiple states. Then Robinson's father saw the FBI's released images of the suspect on the news. In what must have been one of the most agonizing moments of his life, Tyler Robinson's father recognized his own son as the prime suspect in one of the biggest assassinations in recent American history. He approached Tyler with the images. "This looks like you," he said, according to law enforcement officials briefed on the investigation. Tyler Robinson confessed to his father that he had shot Charlie Kirk. What happened next reveals the impossible position Robinson's father found himself in. His son had just admitted to assassinating a major political figure, and the entire nation was looking for him. The father had to choose between protecting his son and doing what was right. Tyler's response when his parents urged him to turn himself in was chilling. "I would rather kill myself than turn myself in." Robinson's parents didn't give up. They convinced Tyler to speak with a family friend who was a deputy sheriff. Through hours of conversation, they persuaded their son that he needed to face justice for what he had done. On September 13, 2025, Tyler Robinson was taken into custody. He was arrested without incident, thanks largely to his father's courage in turning him in, despite the personal cost. Once in custody, Tyler Robinson began to explain why he had killed Charlie Kirk. According to charging documents and statements Robinson made to investigators and his parents, his motive was straightforward. He believed Charlie Kirk was spreading hate and evil, and he felt compelled to stop him. "There is too much evil, and the guy spreads too much hate," Robinson told his parents when he confessed to them. In more detailed statements to investigators, Robinson explained that he had been following Kirk's career for years and had become increasingly angry about his rhetoric. He specifically cited Kirk's views on transgender rights as particularly offensive, given his close relationship with his transgender roommate. Robinson told investigators that he had planned the assassination for months. He had practiced shooting, researched Kirk's speaking schedule, and carefully planned his approach and escape route. The messages on the bullet casings, "Hey fascist" and "Enough," were meant to make a political statement about why he had acted. This wasn't a moment of rage or a spontaneous act of violence. This was premeditated political assassination, carefully planned and executed by a young man who believed he was striking a blow against what he saw as hatred and fascism. The confession raised more questions than it answered. Was Tyler Robinson a political extremist? Was he influenced by radical leftist ideology, as some politicians claimed? Or was this a more personal act, driven by his relationship with his transgender roommate and his perception that Kirk's rhetoric was causing real harm to people he cared about? Drop a comment right now telling us where you're watching from and what you think about Tyler Robinson's motive. Was this political terrorism or something else? We want to hear from viewers in every state. The investigation revealed a complex picture of Tyler Robinson's motivations and mental state. Prosecutors pointed to the anti-fascist messages on the bullet casings and Robinson's text messages about Kirk spreading hate as evidence of a political motive. Utah Governor Spencer Cox stated that Robinson had leftist ideology, and conservative politicians seized on the case as an example of dangerous left-wing extremism. But investigators also uncovered evidence suggesting more personal motivations. Robinson's roommate, who was described as aghast when learning what Robinson had done, told investigators that Robinson had become increasingly fixated on protecting transgender people from what he perceived as Kirk's dangerous rhetoric. The transgender community itself was quick to distance itself from Robinson's actions. Advocacy groups condemned the assassination and emphasized that Robinson's violence didn't represent their values or their movement. As prosecutors prepared their case, they made a significant announcement. They would be seeking the death penalty for Tyler Robinson. The charges against Robinson were severe: first-degree murder with special circumstances, political assassination, terrorism charges, use of a firearm in commission of a felony. The death penalty announcement sparked immediate controversy. Supporters argued that assassinating a political figure warranted the ultimate punishment. Critics argued that the death penalty was being pursued for political reasons, to send a message to anyone who might consider similar violence. The case became a national flashpoint for debates about political violence, free speech, extremism, and justice. Conservative voices called Robinson a terrorist who deserved the harshest punishment possible. Progressive voices condemned the assassination, while arguing that focusing on Robinson's alleged ideology missed the larger point about the dangers of inflammatory political rhetoric. Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, spoke publicly about her husband's death and her determination to continue his work. "Charlie would want us to keep fighting for the values he believed in," she said at a memorial service attended by thousands. "We won't let fear or violence silence us." Turning Point USA announced that it would continue holding events in Charlie Kirk's memory, with enhanced security measures but the same commitment to conservative activism that Kirk had championed. The trial of Tyler Robinson is expected to begin in early 2026. It will be one of the most closely watched trials in recent American history, with implications far beyond the courtroom. Prosecutors will argue that Robinson is a domestic terrorist who committed a premeditated political assassination and deserves the death penalty. They will present the engraved bullet casings, the text messages, and Robinson's own confession as evidence of his political motive and careful planning. The defense faces an enormous challenge. Robinson has confessed to the killing, and the evidence against him is overwhelming. Their only hope is to argue for a lesser sentence by presenting evidence of Robinson's mental state, his motivations, and any mitigating factors that might convince a jury to spare his life. The question of whether Robinson was acting on his own or was influenced by others remains open. Investigators have found no evidence of a conspiracy or that Robinson was directed by any organization or individual. He appears to have acted alone, driven by his own beliefs and anger. But the case has raised urgent questions about the climate of political violence in America. How did we reach a point where a 22-year-old felt justified in assassinating a political figure? What role does inflammatory rhetoric, from both sides of the political spectrum, play in radicalizing individuals toward violence? And how do we prevent future political assassinations while protecting free speech? Tyler Robinson's confession, "There is too much evil and the guy spreads too much hate," will echo through American political discourse for years to come. It represents a justification for political violence that many find terrifying, a belief that assassination can be a legitimate response to speech and ideas one finds objectionable. As we close out this devastating story of political assassination and its aftermath, make sure you've subscribed to The Only Witness and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what you think about this case. Should Tyler Robinson face the death penalty? Was this terrorism or something else? We want to hear from Americans in every state. The assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025, changed America. It demonstrated that political violence can strike anyone, anywhere, even in broad daylight on a peaceful college campus. It showed that words and rhetoric have real-world consequences, and that some individuals will take deadly action based on their interpretation of political messages. Tyler Robinson remains in custody, awaiting trial. His father, who made the painful decision to turn in his own son, has become a symbol of the impossible choices families face when loved ones commit terrible crimes. Charlie Kirk's legacy continues through Turning Point USA and the conservative movement he helped build. His death has made him a martyr to some, a cautionary tale to others, and a tragic reminder that political disagreement should never lead to violence. The trial will determine Tyler Robinson's fate, whether he will spend life in prison or face execution for his crime. But the larger questions raised by this case about political violence, extremism, free speech, and how we talk to each other in an increasingly divided nation will remain long after the verdict is delivered. Thank you for watching this episode of The Only Witness, covering one of the most significant political crimes in recent American history. If this story impacted you, please share it, and don't forget to comment your location and thoughts. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the cases that define our time. This is The Only Witness, signing off.